Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome to the Startup Herpreneur Summit. And today we have Michele PW as the best-selling author of Love-Based Business. Hi! And first off, I have to mention that I love her Love-Based Goals book. It's the first book that I picked up by her, and I just couldn't help but bring her as part of this summit today with you girls. So Michele she has built a solid foundation filled with love-based goals. So she's done copywriting methods, she's done love-based goals, she's done love-based money and mindset. Today in particular, with over 8 years of service and products and helping people make over $50 million, we're gonna talk mainly about copywriting, as well as a little bit of your guide to living your purpose and passion. Just a little bit, because that's my favorite topic. All right, perfect. So Michele, how about you give us a little breakdown of how you got started as a female entrepreneur? What was your startup point?
So basically what happened was the universe was trying to get me to become an entrepreneur long before I was ready. So let's just start there. Because when I was in college, I was convinced when I was in college, because I'm old. I know I don't look old, but I actually am old.
You do not at all.
I'm almost 50.
No way.
I know.
Impossible.
I know, I'm old.
Okay, I have to know what you're eating and what your exercise goal is later. Just so
that's part of the whole goals. So when I was in college, I was convinced that I was supposed to be like this corporate, high-powered career person. Well, and I could not get a job. It was interesting because I kept applying for jobs and I kept being like the second, I would never get the job. I would always be like the second one. And this happened over and over again. But at the same time, I kept getting freelance work. So I was making money, but I just wasn't doing, but I just was like, I have got to become an entrepreneur, not an entrepreneur. I've got to get a corporate job. Well, I feel like looking back, and I feel like what finally happened is the universe finally was like, oh, all right, if this is what you want, here. And I got my corporate job, and then I hated it. So I did it for about a year, and then we moved from Wisconsin to Arizona, and then I still wasn't. I still was like convinced of the whole, like, I'm not an entrepreneur, and I got a job in the government. Oh my God. So it was just, the whole thing was just really funny. And finally in 1998, I decided that I was going to actually become because I kept seeing this pattern where I would have a job. I wouldn't like the job. And, after you go through enough of these jobs, you start to think, because it's like you initially think it's the job. If I just get a different job, everything will be fine. Well, after you've done this, 3, 4, 5 times, you're like, maybe it's not the jobs, maybe it's me. And you think, so maybe what I need to do, because I keep getting this freelance work, maybe I should just freelance and just call it a day. So that's what I did in 1998, is I decided to become a freelancer, full-time freelancer. But that really wasn't what I was supposed to do either. In 2003, 2004, I realized that there was something still not right. I still wasn't on point. And that's when I really started to create a copywriting company, which is what I have today. So I've been an entrepreneur, I've seen I myself have, really evolved and shifted over the years, and I've had a lot of my clients do it. So it's been very interesting to see this, but I started because as an entrepreneur, not thinking. I mean, I really believed that I wasn't a business person. I really believed that I hated business, that I was boring, and that I just wanted to be a writer. So I was really driven by the skill, not being an entrepreneur. And the problem with that, and for anybody else who's this, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, is that you don't actually create a business then. You create a job for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what I really did for an awfully long time, was create a job. So it took a very long time to get my head around the difference between that I actually was an entrepreneur, and the difference between a job, freelance, and all of this other stuff. Because, just because you don't have an employer and a steady paycheck and health insurance doesn't mean you don't have a job. So if you're primarily selling your time, then you need to take a hard look at that.
So that's how you started. I want to know also, where are you now? Now that you know that you don't have the job, now you actually have the business, now you can call yourself an entrepreneur. What's your lifestyle now, and how long did it take you to get there?
So well, first off, what I did was I had to create something new. So it took me longer than I really should have actually to make the switch from being a freelance copywriter to copywriting company, because I had it in my head that that it had to be me. So it wasn't that I was lying to my clients. I just didn't want to make it obvious that I wasn't writing their copy, because I was convinced they weren't going to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because I was looking around. I mean, we model what we do what we model what we see. And I was surrounded by other freelance copywriters, and they have a very specific type business. So I didn't have any good models for what I was trying to create. And so when you look at the sort of like the freelance copywriting model, which is still predominantly what's going on today, it's hard to figure out, like, how can I make that transition? How will people accept it? Which, of course, we all know that if you just come out and you're confident about it, people will accept all sorts of things. So so thinking back on it, it was silly. But so often, as all of our actions are driven so much by fear and things that we don't even talk about. We don't even think about it. Like, if I actually had really sat down and thought about it, I would have realized that it was kind of silly. But you let the story drive you.
Yeah, when you're in it, there's a difference. You can't really
you can't do that. So it took me a while to kind of get my head around and do that. So now I do have a copywriting company. But then the other thing is that part of the reason why I started this. So I started this because I wasn't a very good employee, but also because I wanted to focus on my books. And I taught myself to read when I was 3 years old because I wanted to write stories so much. And then, as it turned out, I also needed to be writing nonfiction books, which I didn't realize either. So now at this point, it took me, again, so now I'm kind of in another evolution, which is, for so long I was like, okay, I'm going to start this copywriting company. And the whole point of the copywriting company is to support me while I write my books, and then I promptly won't write my books for years. So now I'm finally at a place where it's like, what happened is my mother died in 2015. And that's what I finally was like, what am I doing? I set this whole thing up so I would be writing and publishing books, and I'm not doing any of that. So now I feel like I actually am an entrepreneur more than before. I mean, we still have the copywriting and the done for you. That hasn't changed. In fact, it works out better because, I have the copywriting. Here's the first copywriting.
Yay! Thank you.
So I have the copywriting book, and then I have a done, that's, let's do it yourself. And then I have a Love-Based Copy School, which is a done with you copy program, and then I have the done for you. So it's actually more elegant than it was without the books. Wow. And because I'm selling now, I'm getting more into like, okay, so I've got these books, and how can I really just get them out there in a massive way? It's forcing me to change my thinking even more so as an entrepreneur. To an entrepreneurial look, like, how can I reach the masses? Because obviously, if you're just, if you're just doing high-end copy work, which is what I did for a long time, you don't need that many high-end clients to make a very, very good living. Yeah. But if you want to really sell thousands of books, that's, your thinking's got to change. It just has to, because because now you're on a different scale, or even millions of books. I mean, that's really where I'm going, is I want to sell millions of books. So,
good.
What does that look like? And I don't, and again, I'm kind of out there trying to figure it out myself, because I don't know anybody. I mean, even some fiction people that I follow, people are just, there's nothing really. I've got one person I'm following that's probably the closest, but again, I'm sort of cobbling things together again, because it's still, so apparently maybe that's what the universe is trying to tell me. It's like, what, if you really want to go big and build a business on thousands, and hundreds of thousands and millions of people, what does that look like? And you don't happen to be a celebrity. How do you do that? Yeah. How do you take that without doing that? So that's what I'm really playing in right now.
That's interesting, because that's kind of what we're going with in this summit, right? And I like to say, go big or go home. And why not go big and go home? Yeah. And that's the point of being an online business owner, right? Go big and go home. So it's interesting to know that no matter where we are, if you're a startup or if you're 10 plus years down the line, there's still a next level. So no matter where we are, it's okay wherever you're feeling, right? Because there's always something new, and there's always someone else to learn from. And now you're trying to find your role model. So it's
Right, I know, and doing video, because even some of the people, like some of the big people that we may be following, like Jeff Walker or Allie Brown. I mean, and they have reach. I mean, well, Allie Brown is on TV, so she it doesn't quite count, but even taking the TV out, Marie Folio, even taking the TV out, they are reaching thousands of people. But the thing is that I want to reach more people than they are. So it's like, that's the thing. So it's like, I really don't see even anybody in the space who is making that kind of Tony Robbins would probably be the closest. I mean, now he's where he's impacting closer to millions. So how did he? Well, he got on TV. So I mean, so this is all the stuff that I'm playing with. It's like try even getting more, or Joel Osteen.
Joel Osteen's amazing, on point.
Yeah. So looking at those, so that's who I'm looking at, and I can't get unlike some of these other people where I was able to get close to enough to kind of see what they were doing. Those people, there's obviously there's levels here. So. So it's like trying to kind of cobble it together from the outside, but that's the thing. So it's like, yeah, there's always an next level. There's always a way to be, and don't be afraid to think small. I remember I was at a business, like, a conference, an event with my peers. And it was funny because they had somebody go up there and they said, okay, how many people do you want to reach? And so she said 1 million people, which sounds like a lot. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's not big enough. And I went up there and I said, look, there's 7 billion people on this planet. There is 320 million people in this country alone. Why are we only trying to, there's 30 million business owners in this country alone. Why do we only want to impact 1 million people? That's a drop in the bucket. I mean, why are we thinking so? I mean, to me, it's like, we talk about how we're thinking big, but 1 million people isn't big. That's actually, I mean, in the grand scheme of the world.
Yeah.
So,
and the universe, if there's aliens.
Someday. Exactly. So I mean, I know. So it's like, yeah. So it's like, so let's think about. So it's like, how would you impact? How would you reach critical mass just in this country alone with 320 million? Because if you do that, then you might, and then even if you don't hit that, you might hit the million, which would be great. I'm not saying like if you're hitting 1 million people, you're obviously making a very big impact, but maybe not have that be the goal. Maybe think bigger than that, and then the million can be a step down.
I don't really want to get into law of attraction, but at the same time I kind of do. And it's kind of the thought process where I know that some people that are probably listening to this are startups, right? So they're like, I just want to hit the 1.
I just want a couple clients. This is too big.
But I think there's a point of no return where if you try to hit such big numbers and you start going for screw 1 million, let's go for 1 billion.
Yeah.
Think about everything that you could possibly get done just by thinking that far out. Right. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about from the get-go. And thank you for bringing that up. So to try to move things around a little bit, you talked a lot about copywriting and that's your business, and you have the love-based copywriting system or method for that matter. So what is copywriting and what is the copywriting system and how does that work with being an entrepreneur?
So that's a great question. So copywriting is not protecting your intellectual property. So let's just start with that right now. So that's all lawyers and governments and other unpleasant things. It's spelled differently too. It's spelled COPYRIGHT. So what I'm talking about is copywriting with the WR. See, I'll do this. So now that it's great to do video and then you have books. So then I've got props. So it's spelled writing. So it is writing promotion materials for business. And the thing is that this is actually, freelance copywriters have been, like I said, I was in college and really the internet was kind of the twinkle in somebody's eye. But it was still around even back then because, businesses always had lots of things that needed to be written, but it didn't always make sense to have staff, have writers on staff. So to do that. So that's why there's always been like this sort of thriving freelance community underneath all that. Yeah. And obviously the internet has changed things dramatically. But the beauty of it, and why I think that, what I specialize is something called direct response, which is the marketing material, your ideal clients are directly responding to your marketing materials. So that's that's what it is. And the reason why it's so valuable is because it's really about leverage. This is how you can leverage your marketing. So if you don't use direct response copy, which is certainly an option, there are people who make a decent living and they don't ever touch this, but it tends to be a smaller business and it tends to be more geographically you know, like a geographic location, like a massage therapist or something like that. Because if you don't use it, then you have to do everything yourself. You have to go out and network, you know, you have to go out and meet your prospects one-on-one. You have to sell them one-on-one. You have to follow up with them one-on-one. And then obviously you have you know, you have to actually, you know, do the services, fulfill what they bought, product fulfillment or service fulfillment. So for but when you do copywriting, when you do direct response copywriting, now you're marketing one to many. So you can you
That's
put
where the million comes from.
yes, in the sales letters, and because you're now marketing one to many. So part of the reason why you can do that is because it's using persuasion techniques, and persuasion is just part of everyday communications. We are social creatures, you know, we have to communicate, and persuasion is just one piece of it. It's not about, you know, we're not talking about manipulation. We're talking about persuasion. I mean, and you're going to you're persuading all the time, and you're being persuaded all the time. You know, you're trying to persuade your kids to go to bed at a certain bedtime. You're persuading your spouse to take you out to your favorite restaurant. So there's always persuasion going on.
I did that today. Continue.
Yes, I know, we all do. So it's like it's not a dirty word, and it's not just about being sold to or having tons of advertising. Although you know, obviously that's part of it. It's a whole host of things. So
even telling someone about a movie, correct?
Yes, just even sell. Yeah, if you want somebody, yeah, if you're trying to sell somebody about how great the movie is because you want them to see it, or how great a book is.
Oh my God, you have to see this movie.
Yes, exactly. It's all persuasion. So, so if you want to persuade somebody to actually take action or change their action, like let's say you want to persuade somebody to stop smoking. I mean, so that's the thing. There's other persuading things too. If you want them to take action, you have to tap into their emotions, and you have a choice. You can tap into their fear-based emotions, which is fear, you know, anxiety, anger, grief, which doesn't persuade very well, but shame, guilt, all of that, and or you can tap into love-based emotions.
That's where love-based business comes from. Got it.
Exactly. So, and everything really is based on, you know, people are either building things on a foundation of fear or a foundation of love, which is what I realized after I wrote the book and got it out there and started talking about it. I realized how everything really was built on one of those foundations. So then I started my love-based business series, which is, you know, a series of books basically. And then I also have other authors coming in, like I have Sean Driscoll, love-based business model. So yeah, so you can also, if you feel like you've got a love-based thing, you can be a part of the series as well. But really showing the differences, like how you can, like rather than doing everything the traditional fear-based way, how you can actually start to build something on a foundation of love, because that's really, you know, our government, our business, our families, our health. I mean, there's, you know, that's everything that we do. There's really, we can choose to do it either way. And a lot of times our default is fear, because that's what we're comfortable with. That's what we were kind of surrounded with, you know, because our parents and society didn't know any better. So they didn't, and so that that feels comfortable to us. But the reality is that we can choose something different. We can choose love if we want, and we can build it on love.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that start off, especially to whether they have their own service or their own product, a lot of the times, and we're going over mindset throughout the summit as well, and limiting beliefs and so on and so forth, so I'm not going to touch into that right now. A lot of the times when they're trying to be salesy or inauthentic at time periods when they're selling, they're like, you have to buy this, right? And sometimes I know that some people, like especially some women that may have a kid coming up or want to work at home and want to get rid of their job already, and they're trying to push the sale. How do we get that into a love-based feeling? And how do we, like, I know that the cog is a way, right? Really touching into people's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, you know, sizzling steak versus steak. What are other little examples like that so we can really get them to sell authentically to people?
So I love that. So first off, I think the biggest thing here is really managing your own mindset and your own come from. So basically, if you are getting on a sales call or about to write a sales email, marketing email, and you are feeling that exactly what you said, like, oh my God, like that desperate energy, or that energy, like I've got to get this sale. Then you are tipping into fear, because and the thing is that there's no judgment. We've all been there. That's part of the it's a lot of this is subconscious, and
especially in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the thing, and the thing is, if you are scared right now because you don't know how you're going to pay your bills, or you are really frustrated with your job, and if you don't get some sales, you can't quit, I mean, it makes sense. So you need to be feeling those emotions. So the biggest thing here is really just being able to manage your emotions. So that's the first step, is feeling all those emotions.
I say
And
awareness, right? The first step is always awareness.
yes, and not letting it trigger you, because that's really what this is all about, is letting you don't want to be, your emotions are, they just want to be felt. You should not be making decisions with your emotions. You should not be taking actions with your emotions. You should just be feeling them. Now, obviously, if you are feeling really, like if you're having a lot of fear and you are like in 5 minutes getting on a sales call, you obviously can't, you might not have the time to really sit there and let you feel these emotions. So at that point, yeah,
Like imagine
exactly.
it's hilarious
So obviously life happens.
Yeah.
So what you may need to do is do something like, whatever you can do to shift in the moment, but that doesn't mean not going back and feeling the emotions. I'm not advocating stuffing or anything like that. So instead, like, maybe you need to go outside and ground yourself,
There you
or
go.
affirmations or some gratitude work, just something in the moment where you can shift and be at that kind of, like, everybody, where you want to be is everybody's getting taken care of at their highest level. And if you can be at that place where you can be committed to everybody getting what they need, including your financial needs met, but not attached to how that looks,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be in the best place. And maybe it looks like you don't get that sale for whatever reason, but maybe, but not getting that sale means something even better comes along.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a matter of trust and surrender and some other things. So it's not easy, but that's really the big thing, because the thing is when we're in that grip of fear,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be really difficult for us not to do all that kind of pursuing and desperation energy. But the reality is, if we don't control our own emotions, I mean, we've all been on a sales call where the person felt desperate, and we're not going to buy from desperate people.
Yeah, exactly. So really moving from fear to love-based, right? And not just in copywriting, but in your mindset and everything else. There's things that you can do, such as grounding that you mentioned, right? Meditation is another one. Journaling out your feelings is another way. And I'm trying to think, what else have I heard in your book? I know that you mentioned the circadian rhythm, really getting in flow with who you are, the moon
Yes.
phases, right?
Yeah, tapping can work too. So I haven't mastered tapping as much, but tapping, yeah, that whole, like,
Yeah, EFT. Got it.
EFT, yeah, emotional freedom technique.
Yeah.
But that, like, because that can shift as well. So tapping can work. What I simply do is just kind of breathe through the emotions. So it's like with me, like, I have my big problem is fear. I've got a lot of worry. I broke a lot of my worry, but occasionally it will still come up. I mean, it is what it is. But if I just sit and not try to bury it by future spinning, that's what worry is. I mean, you don't want to feel the worry, so you start thinking of all these solutions to make yourself feel better. Well, if you just stop the story and just breathe into the worry, it goes away.
Yeah.
So it goes away actually faster than you would imagine. So, but it's really hard to sit there, because having done it, I can tell you that, because it feels like you're going to die. I mean, it's really hard to breathe. Your chest is tight. I mean, there's physical sensations here, but then once you break it, once you move through it, you're good. So that would be, and I also think, like, the work of Byron Katie, like, you can go to her website, the work, and go through those questions, because I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the fear-based emotions, we don't want to feel them, so we create stories. So we can work through those stories, we can probably work through those emotions.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the things that I always teach my girls is to be able to breathe in, breathe out, in whatever moment you're in, right? And understanding that connecting with your heart is fantastic and great and all spiritual and woo-woo like, but sometimes I think it's necessary to step into the head. And there's a reason that we have the head, right? And that's where getting out of the fear and kind of getting into the moment versus living in that story of the past and this is what's happening to me, and really getting into what's happening right here, right now. And that's when you notice that the fear is normally in the past, right? And
Right.
so,
Or in the future, like you're
or
worried
in
of that
the future.
XYZ is going to happen. It hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
And but so who knows what's going to happen. So and the thing is that, and I've talked to some people who've had just the worst things happen, like they really did lose their houses or go bankrupt, or and the thing is the worry was worse than when it actually happened. You know what I mean? So it's like, so the thing is it's what's really stupid is that, you know, even if the bankruptcy, like you're worried about going bankrupt and then you end up going bankrupt, which is bad.
Mhm.
um the going through the bankruptcy is less, is likely going to be less stressful than all the worry that you did
Yeah.
beforehand. So in that case, yeah, you're right, staying in the present moment is just really that, I mean, that's all we have.
Mm-hmm. So let's bring this into business for a second, right? So how does this connect to business? In my head, I'm thinking of when I was a startup and I was like, oh my God, is this going to work? Am I really going to make this happen? Like, what if this fails? And I think there's something to that. Do you want to talk about that for a second? Like how,
Yeah, so if you're only going to grow as much as your mindset, so I will say right now, so the sooner you can get in, you know, control of your emotions, because what's going to happen is if you don't deal with this,
Mhm.
your emotions will dictate how big your business gets. So if you're
Mm.
feeling a lot of fear, like around being visible, you know, or whatever, you know, or if you have the secret fear that your spouse will leave you if you get too successful, guess what? You are going to struggle and never get that next client. Um, so I think the more you can actually deal with whatever, and a lot of times, by the way, these emotions don't, I mean, these fears don't even make any sense. I mean, because you could,
Yeah.
you know, they don't, but
At the
it doesn't
moment, it feels like they do, right?
Yes, and the thing is, like, you can't reason with your emotions. You can, you know, they're not to be reasoned with or logic with or discussion. I mean, that's your head. You know, your emotions are simply just need to be felt.
Yeah.
And if you haven't felt them before, that's part of the problem too. Is that when you first start this work, you know, you'll find emotions popping up during really odd times that doesn't make any sense. So the more you work through it, though, the more you'll just be at kind of more of a neutral,
Yeah.
and and then you won't be making decisions because you don't want to feel bad. And that's really, that's why we stop ourselves, because something feels bad to do in our business. Like, let's say we don't want to do cold calls, because who wants to do cold calls or hear the no's?
Yeah.
But you need to cold call. So so if you are allowing your emotions to control you, you never find time to cold call. But if you just like feel the you know, if you just let the, you know, if you just do it anyways, even regardless of how you feel, now you're going to grow your business.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was beautiful. Thank you, Michelle.
You're
So
welcome.
before we move on, we're about to close this, and this is going to be my second to last question. And I just want to know what's like, if you can give one tip for copywriting in particular, for that system, the method that we were talking about, what's that one tip to start people off in the right way of persuasion?
So think about writing a love letter to your clients. So I think, like, if you just picture it that way, that you have that you have ideal clients, and I talk about that more in the book and stuff like that, since this is
Oh,
just one
perfect.
tip. And then you picture them in your head and you're writing a love letter to them. That changes all the energy, because then that takes away sort of the persuasion, manipulation energy out of it, because you're writing a love letter, you're connecting with them,
Mm.
and you know they're in pain, you know they need what you have. So why wouldn't you share it with them?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. All
Yeah.
right, so my very last question of the day, okay, is what is an action step? Now that we've gone through the basics and we've given some great information here, and thank you again for this, what is an action step that they can take as soon as they finish this video that would help them with better copy or better finding their purpose or just better having a love-based attitude of life and business?
So I think making a decision. So the best thing you can do, and that's the thing, everything starts with a decision.
Mm.
So and you can have multiple decisions, by the way, because there might be lots of things you want to get done. But if you are, you know, if you are listening and you're like, okay, so I'm going to do what it takes to, you know, to grow my business and take the action that I'm like, then make a decision that you're going to do what it takes, whatever it takes, because it all starts there. Now, chances are that's going to happen, and then all sorts of crappy things are going to happen, and it's going to make you go, oh my God, why did I make that decision?
Truth.
Um, but the thing is that it's actually kind of a good thing, because if all the crappy things didn't happen, then that's because that's showing you what you need to process and move through in order to have your business. So if you want to do love based, if you are going to build your business on a foundation of love versus fear, and you're going to sell and market on love, then make a decision. That's what you're going to do. Because if you don't make that decision, because so much of this is your mindset. So if you're not committed to building a business on love and persuading on love, then it's going to be really easy to slip into fear. It'll be unconscious. I mean, nobody's, there's no judgment. I mean, and if it's your choice to do it, that's fine too. I mean, love base is about educating and stepping back and letting people make their own choices. So, whatever you want to do is fine, but just make a choice, make a decision, and move forward that way. Make a full body 100% decision and see what happens.
Wow. And you just went over the basics. We've talked about awareness, and then we've also talked about choice. And I think that's huge for people to choose, like, is this really the route I really want to go through? And know that after you pick this decision, there's going to be a roller coaster ride. And a lot of people think it's point A to point B, and there's a straight line. There's no way in beep that's going to happen, right? Yeah. It's going to be a roller coaster ride, and whether you like roller coasters or not, this is what's coming, right? And it's just like life. You can say, I want to get married in 5 years. Okay, good luck with that. Yeah. Right? So no matter where you are, and I guess having kids is easier, but it's still a roller coaster ride, right?
Oh yeah, so, yeah, exactly. Everything is a roller coaster. Once you have them, of course, it's a roller coaster.
Exactly. So I know, Michele, that you had offered these beautiful ladies a gift, a free gift for that matter. Can you talk a little about what is in that free gift, and then I'll tell them to click the link at some point.
Yeah, so it's the love-based copywriting template, and it's really a good way to get you started. And it's got some of the foundation. We didn't cover all the foundational pieces, so if you want to get started with love-based copy, or even just understanding more the love-based philosophy, because it really, once you know one thing, you kind of know it all. Mm-hmm. So this is a good way to kind of get started with the love-based philosophy, and obviously love-based copy, mm-hmm. and that will also help you sell. Like sell more with love is what I talk about. So it'll also not only help you with your marketing materials, but when you do sales calls and all of that.
Yay. So what's something that's in the template? I'm guessing you've talked about something, but is there something we haven't talked about that's in the template so they have an idea?
Yeah. So I go through the 3 foundational principles. So we did talk about mindset and come from. I talk about that more there, but then I also talk about the truth about pain, which is very interesting, and also ideal client. And I give some exercises on that, so how they can find that. So those are both very valuable to really help you grow your business.
I'm interested. I'll see your gift. Thank you very much. All right, Michele, thank you so much for this beautiful time that we've had together. It has been a pleasure, and I hope that we have another opportunity soon to do this again.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Bye, girls.